Go.
It's almost 4 decades we have to cast our minds back when life was so much simpler than things are when you're just 10. However, a long list of superlatives was soon to cross my mind, and I knew quite instantly a better mate I'd never find. Good-looking, charismatic, confident, it's a list I might end never. I'm talking about his mum, of course, so he'd be my mate forever. We sat together immediately on our first day at Pershore High. A similar average intelligence is perhaps the reason why, but a passionate love of football was our mutual intrigue. John's Forest team were European champs, having earlier won the league. Led by Clough and Taylor, they seemed to then win cups at will, and it seemed to take a lifetime till their weekly score was 0. If you've sensed a competitive edge with John, it was there right from the start, and weaker lads than I would crumble back that day in art. John drew my team Manchester City's badge with Ship, Canal and Rose. Then he smugly showed off the finish work and we came to verbal blows. You see, my team were plummeting and almost on the brink. So when John drew the ship on it, he made the bugger sink. You see, the gift of sarcastic wit he had was all quite new to me, and no other kids were as good at it, as far as I could see. He made me laugh, got my attention as only clever humour can, so with that trait, a bonus, he became my main wingman. And it came to pass that PE would become John's favourite educational hours, but the horrifying downer here was cold communal showers. Certain things back then, the memory fails. I really don't know why, but this vision I now recollect will stay with me till I die. Most of us just nervously tiptoed in and quickly out, but John danced in like Louis Spence and waved his dick about. What are you doing, I thought to myself. He'd made no attempt to hide, and I briefly thought he fancied batting for the other side. Damning proof to the contrary was to surface very soon, because by 14 he'd organised some strip poker at home one afternoon. I wasn't there, but I quickly learned when his mum burst through the door, the hottest babe in our year was sat semi-naked on the floor. John had rigged the deck, you see, he couldn't flippin' lose. She was down to bra and pants, he'd not even lost his shoes. My absence probably meant I was deemed a far more suitable mate. Well, at least until John talked me into indoor football at any rate. We played head tennis in his room, quite successfully for a time. But then John lost control of it, and the ball just shot offline. Now be aware that this was actually 2 weeks from Christmas Day, and as most of you know all too well, John loves gifts that go his way. That wasn't my fault, I said as we stared at broken porcelain. You see, I played enough football at high school and I'd sooner talk to Jane. Well, I was sent from his room, and as John shed a sorry tear upon the news that he'd not received a single present that year.
No Christmas present.
I know. It's always been that John can talk his way out of any sticky spot. But one day in a history class he didn't bargain for what he got. He chatted back to Mr. Street, the teacher at the time, and I guess he thought that John perhaps needed bringing back in line. John wouldn't relent his cheek, and Mr. Street could take no more. John was about to talk his way from our desk and out of the classroom door. The teacher's patience shattered and his mist descended red. So out John went and upstairs 2 floors to get caned by the head. John's my biggest social influence. He's talked me into this and that. We were just 15 when he suggested that we bike to Simmons Yacht. I wasn't at all sure where this was. He said it wasn't far away. Fetch spare pants and your tent, he said. We'll set off the following day. Well, we left first thing from Sheriff's Lench. To Upton first we'd got, and up the Malvern Hills where our pedalling slowed up somewhat. We reached the top and the genius of John's route became quite clear. We'll freewheel down to Ross, he said. Simmons Yacht would soon be near. Well, it wasn't quite near as it goes, and more hills were in our way. And by the time we reached the campsite, we'd been cycling all day. We slept like logs inside that tent, but decided there and then, we'll have 1 full day in Simmons Yacht, then cycle home again. By the summer of 1986, John had learned to drive. So to sixth form parties in his mum's minivan is how we would arrive. We'd have Big Country or Simple Minds on loud for maximum effect. And in pastel-coloured shirts and grey espadrilles is how we were bedecked. But within a year, a smart Chevette. He'd a smart Chevette. It's forest ready, boast. So in that, for our holiday that year, we headed off to the coast. The English Riviera and Torquay we thought we'd like. And of course, with John's shiny new Vauxhall, this time we didn't have to bike. We used the local swimming pool and with girls now on our mind. As we cruised down into Devon, we wondered what delights we'd find.
Delights.
Spying some suitable types upon driving in, I'm not sure how it went, but by the second night these lucky girls had joined us at our tent. Well, I chatted to mine quite patiently, I thought was perhaps the way to go, but evidently John must have felt things were moving far too slow. I could see the impatience in his eyes. He wanted his deal sealed. So out of the blue he said, "Aren't you into sex?" And they ran back down the field. Now John is good at driving, but once we had a fright. He picked me up as usual and we sped off into the night. We rattled round the country lanes in a Fiat Panda he'd been lent, but then we had to brake quite violently to avoid an accident. An old lady in another car moving oh so slower than us. No worries though, John just screamed past with the minimum of fuss. This manoeuvre went quite well, but things decidedly got worse when JJ hit the brakes again and slammed it in reverse. To this day I don't know why he was attempting this. To take another look, I suppose, at the car we'd done well to miss. At first this harebrained stunt went completely without hitch, but the next I knew the air turned blue and the borrowed Panda was in the ditch. Next, John had 2 Ford Escorts, then one of those Orions. So to the safari park in that we went to see the tigers and the lions. Before we got to the big cats though, was the greatest sight by far. A dozen or so baboons jumped on the bonnet of John's new car. A few of them just danced about, but this one stared through the glass. Looked John in the eye, pulled the wiper blade off, turned round and showed John his arse. I didn't think laughing could hurt so much. I thought I was going to die. So with me catching my breath, JJ at the gas and we waved those cheeky monkeys goodbye.
They're no longer in Westminster Safari Park, they've been banished.
I know. Right. In more recent years, the game of golf has become John's primary sporting concern. He wasn't great when he started out, but he was determined that he'd learn. Armed with an unquestionable will to succeed and some lessons from Ryan Dix, John was transformed and now knew how to properly use his sticks. His etiquette's improved as well. He's now a proper golfing gent. And it's a distant memory back to the clubs he chucked and bent. If John loves something, perfection's his goal. And there's no prouder maid than I.
Don't cry again.
That his will to win propels him there, and he sets his standards high. It's a cliche, but too many to mention are the laughs we've shared as one, and the memories made mean the world to me as we approach 40 years on. We've travelled over land and sea to watch our favourite bands on tour. We played golf in Florida together. Who could really ask for more? Sometimes we talk a different language. It's the whole Blackadder script. And I know which line he'll quote next. It's easy to predict. Our relationship in all this time has suffered no mishaps. And having a friend so key for this long, I'm the luckiest of chaps.
Oh.
He's lucky too to have found Michelle. A lady with beauty both out and in. And surrounded by beautiful children, a new chapter they begin.
Rather.
I'm going to wish them love and luck, but I know they'll do just great, and I know a more thoughtful, special girl one could not find for my best mate.
Oh.